Just gave people a minute or two to come in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm John Rauschenberger, and for the next hour and 15 minutes or so, we're going to be talking a little bit about what Lync can do in terms of helping customers power their contact centers. And we're kind of going to look at it from a couple of different perspectives. First, how do we meet sort of the basic functionality that people are most commonly asking for today? Whether they're transitioning from another platform or already using Lync and really just looking to expand what they're doing with Lync. What kinds of things can we do to enable the traditional types of customer care scenarios in a call center running on top of the Lync platform? And then we're also going to talk a little bit about looking forward, kind of beyond the traditional inbound PSTN voice calls getting routed to the best available agent based on skills and availability. What are some other things we can start thinking about and looking at in terms of delivering customer care solutions, again, leveraging the capabilities that the Lync platform provides? Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm one of the founders and the CTO at Clarity Consulting. We have a mix of products. We have a contact center product in the market that we'll talk a little bit about today. But most of the content today is really going to be more focused on capabilities in terms of the platform and the different options that are out there to deliver contact center functionality. But we also wanted to talk a little bit today in the context of what one of our customers is doing with the product and how they're meeting customer care needs. And we decided Microsoft would be a good customer to talk about. So Daniel Valik will be joining me on stage a little bit to talk about how Microsoft is using Lync to power customer care solutions in their environment. Now, before I get started, we've got a whole bunch of giveaways here from different vendors. Jabra and Plantronics have both provided some hardware. And Daniel and I are both hoping to have some interactivity with the audience here. So anybody who has a question during the session, feel free to... What's that? Anybody who has a question related to the content that offers some additional insight and value add to the overall discussion, you're welcome to take one of the giveaways up here. So as you ask questions, we'll ask you what you want, and we'll run that out to you throughout the session. So feel free to interrupt. I think it'll be a small enough crowd that we can handle that interactively and not have to wait till the end. Just to take a minute and let you know kind of who we are and where the perspective we're coming at the UC product and environment from. Clarity's been around for about 18 years. We were founded originally as a pure custom dev consulting firm. So we really founded the company on this concept that for the first time in the early 90s, Microsoft had a platform that enterprise customers could build solutions on to run their business. Throughout our history, we've done a lot of work in call centers, in telephony-enabled solutions, and when Microsoft brought their first UC products to market, we saw that as an opportunity for us to develop some expertise in what they were doing in that space and also diversify our offerings, so move beyond pure custom dev consulting and start offering products based on top of this platform. And that was really the genesis of where we made the decision to build out Clarity Connect as a standalone product and bring it to market. It was leveraging that expertise we had in the Microsoft Dev platform, the telephony and contact center vertical expertise that we had, and combining that to bring the product to market. We've done a lot of work with Microsoft. If you participated in any of the TAP programs, primarily around building out the training content for developers, our focus is entirely on the extensibility platform that Microsoft provides. We don't do Lync deployments. We don't do Lync planning. If you guys have in-depth questions about how you should architect your Lync infrastructure, I'm not the right person. I've got my own ideas and opinions, but that's not the kind of work that we do. We're really focused on the extensibility platform. How can we extend Lync to do things that it doesn't do out of the box through custom development, and then offer that either as a product or do it through a consulting services engagement? Clarity Connect specifically, we're not going to go through a product demo today, and it's certainly not a sales pitch on the product, but just in terms of what it is and what we do have in the market. We made the decision to build this as a native Lync contact center product, meaning we're built on top of the Microsoft-provided APIs. We only work with Lync. We work very well with it, but we only work with Lync. And it was the first product to come out that was truly a native solution for the platform. We've had it in the market for over 3 years now, so we've been doing this all the way back to the OCS 2007 R2 days. We had that product in the market, and we had customers and still have customers live running on OCS 2007 R2. So for today's talk, we're really kind of going to break this up into two parts. In a minute, I'm going to hand it over to Daniel, and he's going to spend some time talking about the value of unified communications in the contact center. So how do you think about and leverage the core capabilities of a UC-enabled platform to deliver customer care solutions that help your business in some meaningful way? And yes, part of that is just enabling the core capabilities that you need earlier that I talked about in terms of routing those inbound calls to an agent. But then how can you start to think about using some of those capabilities that a platform like Lync provides to move beyond that and reduce handle times for agents or enable self-service scenarios that you couldn't otherwise without some of those core capabilities. So Daniel's going to talk a lot about what Microsoft's doing, the value they're seeing, where they want to take it. When he's finished, then I'm going to kind of bring it back and talk a little bit about some of the challenges. So a lot of great things that Daniel's going to talk about, a lot of amazing capabilities. I'll pull it back then and say, here's some of the ways that we see people struggle with these types of deployments and how you can help avoid some of those challenges and bring the vision that Daniel's going to paint to life. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Daniel for a little while, and then I'll come back up at the end.
So, yeah, first of all, I hope actually you had a nice afternoon, interesting conversations during the Lync conference, hopefully interesting keynote, and there's almost a attendee party tonight in SeaWorld, so I think we will have a lot of fun. But before we think about party, let's talk about something very interesting, right? About customer care and how we use it actually at Microsoft. So first of all, my name is Daniel Jonathan Valik. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Unified Communications, so including Lync and Skype in customer care. And I'm actually driving customer care opportunities globally for Microsoft, mainly right now in the US, but also in Southeast Asia, also for Europe. You can hear on my accent, actually, I am from Europe. So if you have any questions, if something is unclear, then let me ask. Or it's probably a prize that you win, right? Well, so around 2 years ago, Microsoft did a research together with Gartner, IDC, Forrester, and we tried to find out how the customer care area is changing, how customer support is changing, and the kind of contact center behind. So what's the contact center in the past? How do we need to look today to be competitive in the market in customer care as well? And how do we need to change actually customer care in our contact centers at Microsoft globally around the world in future? Well, so we started actually to think about the evolution of customer care and the evolution of contact center. And it's quite interesting because 1 or 2 decades ago, customer care was really voice-centric. So everyone knows that, right? So the IVR solutions, the customer taking the phone, dialing an 800 number or toll-free number. You're getting into an ACT environment, into actually an IVR environment. And then afterwards with technology and a little bit luck, you get routed to the right resource and you're getting support at the end. So a lot of this environment you can find also not outside in different customer and partner environments. Also Microsoft, before we had actually live communication server, Office communication server, Lync 2010, Lync 2013, in Skype now, actually we invested heavily in traditional legacy environment within Microsoft. So it's a very common space that I find within Microsoft that we're working, of course, with the same technology that you might have in your own environment. Well, technology is changing, right? And today, a lot of different modalities and a lot of different communication channels coming together. And you can see that with unified communication when we're talking about chat, voice, and video, sharing, and a lot of different technologies, how we can engage today with our business partners and customers in a better way. But at the same time, it's the same thing for customer care. So when I talk about contact centers, usually I see in customer environments that customer and also Microsoft in a certain case, we are creating our own silos. We're having a solution for voice. We're having a solution for chat. We're having a solution for IVR, for routing, right? And much more, even for video, to actually meet the customer needs in customer care. Yeah, to actually getting a better interface and getting a better collaboration interface to the customer. Well, the future of customer care is interesting, and we worked with Gartner on a research paper where we see everything comes together, right? So you can hear about WebRTC and social networking and more unified communications. And I would say for the last 2 years, I'm seeing more and more unified communication-enabled contact centers or integrated contact centers. So the difference is actually that a lot of customers are starting to think about Lync, think about Skype, about unified communications attached to their contact center, and some other customers thinking about to replace the current environment with Lync, with a certified or developed application on the top on Lync like Clarity, and run inbound and outbound communication with customers. And to be honest, Microsoft is the same way. We're having a lot of legacy environment, and we're going more and more into the new world, where we are using our own platform, also Skype, of course, and we're using a lot of new communication modalities for better interaction with our customers. So the future that you can see on the slide is something that comes together, right? So we call it unified communication and social media enabled contact center. This is something that you see more and more in the next couple of years. And when you attend other conferences than the Lync conference, and I'm happy that you're here, of course, but then you can see a lot of other companies worldwide covering this topic and talking about how customer care has to look like in future. Yeah? Not only to make it simpler and more cost efficient, but also being more competitive in terms of customer care between your organization and other organizations in the market. Well, what is the business case? So I started around 15 months ago to find business cases within Microsoft, within the organization, and to analyze the environment with different teams. And to be honest, before we had, as I said before we had live communication server up to Lync 2013, so all the unified communication environments in our own walls at Microsoft, we invested a lot in Cisco ICM. We invested a lot in different, even competitive applications, and a lot of custom development. So just to mention, at Microsoft, we're having 15 different CRM applications around the globe. So we're using Dynamics, right? It's a great application, but we're using also a lot of custom developed applications to find out who is the customer, what's the need, where can we find the right resource, and a lot more behind it. So the business case for Microsoft, and potentially also for you, is a huge potential to optimize cost, to actually replace legacy environments, right? To create a better collaboration and communication interface between your organization, between the contact center and the customer itself. Actually also being more innovative, right? In terms of Microsoft, that's a very competitive statement, because if you go, for example, to Cisco and to Apple, and especially Apple is offering also video support on the devices. So you call Apple and you can get a video chat on the device. So this, in terms of competition, is very important that also Microsoft is offering that. Yeah? And I'm sure it's the same thing for Cisco, for Google, and for other companies. So customer care is a very competitive environment. So the experience of the customer to buy a solution, to buy a product, and at the end to have the right contact in the organization and the right level of support is a critical item actually in the whole customer support process, in the whole customer process actually between, when you sell your products and solutions up to make a happy customer. Well, in terms of cost optimization, so Microsoft has around a phone bill of around $50 million per year. So, and I don't count here the legacy environment, all the equipment that you need from routing, PBXs, contact center integration, business intelligence, reporting, all the parts of a contact center. This is one thing. So with Lync, with Skype, with Federation, we have the ability to actually reduce the cost down to zero in some cases. I'll give you a very good example. So Microsoft is working with a lot of offshore contact centers. So we're having federation between a couple of our offshore contact centers and between Microsoft. So the ability to take actually a customer call or to take a chat from a customer and to route it through Microsoft to the right resource in an offshore contact center, and then only through federation between Lync and Lync or Skype and Lync, is a huge opportunity for us. And we're creating right now those kind of environments within Microsoft. Another example is that we're having more than 35 different PBX solutions. So we're replacing more and more legacy technology inside Microsoft with our own platform. And I know that sounds probably funny for you because Lync is our own product, but Microsoft has 6,000 employees in the customer care field and a lot of investment from the last couple of years, which is still in place. And we invested actually before Lync, before Office Communication Server in those kind of environments. So we have the same business case that you might have. When can we replace our legacy environments into Lync, and when can we go to Lync Skype to a whole unified communication-enabled contact center only for our customers? And right now, the time is right, because all the modalities, the features are in Lync. You have the APIs. I'm talking a little bit later about it. And of course, the right partner solutions on the top on Lync make it possible that you go with Lync and with unified communications actually in the customer care space with our solutions, right? So a very critical piece, what we're doing at Microsoft, is we're creating new interfaces. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So, of course, I can offer support to the customer through phone, right? So the customer has a phone number, you call in, you get routed to the right resource. That's one way. I can do the same with web chat. With only 3 lines of code, I can create a web chat integration on my page. And then afterwards, I point the contact to the right resource, to the right Lync-enabled agent in the backend environment. It's a great example how you can save cost. with interfaces like UCWA that you might hear in the keynote session and some other sessions, it will be possible in future to drive all the modalities from voice, video, chat, even persistent chat in future, only through a web endpoint between the customer and between your customer or between your contact center. What a great opportunity to save cost and to create a better experience for the customer. Well, less competitive technology. That's probably more the Microsoft case, but I want to tell you it. So you can imagine if we are having a Cisco environment at Microsoft and we're selling Lync outside, the question is valid, why we're not using our own technology. And this is the case. So we're shifting from competitive technology that we are using, and Cisco is in some areas also a partner, not only a competitor, to our own platform. So this is very good for our reputation, but it's also good for our platform because we are using our platform in any particular vertical business. And customer care and contact centers for Microsoft actually a kind of vertical business inside the organization. Yeah, and at the end, happy customer, right? So if the customer has it easy to find an information, so if you go to a MicrosoftSupport.com webpage, you type in a question, you have the ability for self-help, you see a visual IVR, for example, you press a button, you get routed to the next stage of customer support. We identify you and we know you as customer from your live account, Skype account, so Microsoft account in other words, and we can offer you a much higher level on support. That makes you actually potentially to a happier customer in terms of Microsoft and Microsoft itself more successful. And I bet it's the same for your organization, right? So this is the business case, right? And when we go to the technology, what kind of tools are we using around Lync when we're talking about this kind of deployments? First of all, Lync is not a contact center solution, but Lync is a platform for that. So Lync offers you all the different communication channels. And on the top, we are using today partner solutions. And a great partner solution is here Clarity, with Clarity Connect that you see in more details later. And we're creating actually a customer experience and a routing path from customer to the right resource within Microsoft with Clarity today. I'll tell you about two specific business cases later, and I'll go more in detail how we build it. But there are also other tools. So Lync 2013 and also Lync 2010 gives you a lot of opportunities for custom development, right? So we talked about UCWA, which is the Unified Communications Web App, where you can create the whole experience in future actually into a web page. But we also have UCMA, so the Unified Communication Managed Application, where you can create your own applications based on Lync, and you can pretty much create your own tools for customer care. And a couple of those tools that we have within Microsoft is I'm an expert. So let's say you have actually a bot, so a kind of entry point on a web page. You click on it, a web chat window would open on the page. You can type in your question, and an automated mechanism takes the keywords, takes the language, and routes you to the right agent inside the organization, or to a partner for federation, or to an offshore contact center. That's a great way. And you can do that in different languages. So we're having some pilots right now running inside Microsoft where the agent is talking in English, but I can type in the question in German, right? And I get routed to the right resource and have language translation between agent and between customer. So this is a part of the future. Another thing is web chat that I already explained, or in some simple scenarios, we're still using Lync response group services. So a very simple way for very small contact centers to create a number, you call actually into the Lync system, into the ACD system of Lync, and then afterwards, through response group service, you get routed to the right endpoint. But it's not something that I would actually recommend. So if you go more for a more complex, more intelligent solution, especially also in terms of business intelligence and reporting what happens in your environment, then you should consider solutions like Clarity. So a very interesting case is actually persistent chat. And I self had a deployment for around 800 agents 3 weeks ago from now. And what we did is actually we integrated chat rooms with persistent chat for agents. So that means when you're a customer and you're calling the Xbox hotline, and that happens today, by the way, then you're getting connected to one of our agents. And the agent itself is connected into a chat room virtually to other agents. So if you ask a question, then we can actually collaborate behind the scene with experts to resolve your case. And that's just pure standard installation of Lync 2013 persistent chat. Well, and then afterwards, when we resolve the case, we are able to send out a survey. We can connect to the customer, but we're reducing actually the transfer times from the customer side to the agent. And nobody wants to call the agent. You get connected and forward and forward and forward to the right resource. right? So persistent chat is a good example. I talked about federation. Let me also talk a little bit about Skype. So Skype gives you the opportunity for instant messaging and for audio, as you have seen in the keynote, to connect to a Lync-enabled user. In customer care, in the customer care world, it's an agent, right? So the opportunity that we're having is that we're reaching out to 300 million users on Skype. And for example, if you go in future on the Microsoft support web page, then we might be able at this time to analyze, do you run Skype? Do you run Lync? If not, we pop up a web chat. Otherwise, we opening your Skype client and we connecting you to the right resource within Microsoft. So this is a mainstream that we're going to, and I only can tell you it's probably also a benefit for your business. Well, what's the business case? And two examples that I bring with me is Microsoft Advertising and Office 365. Let me talk a little bit about advertising, a couple of minutes. So advertising at Microsoft works like that. For a small and medium business, you engage Microsoft for marketing campaigns. So that means if you're the customer and I'm the agent, you call me, and then afterwards I would say, hey, fine. So you want to run a marketing campaign, you want to put in your product solution information into the Bing search, so when other customers of yours are searching for your product, then afterwards we can come up with some advertising on the Bing side. We give you more information, and at the end we're getting revenue from you because you run with us marketing campaigns. Well, what we're doing now is that we said we want to have a better customer interface, a better collaboration interface. We want to achieve higher revenue, but we want to engage more customers, and they need to be more happy, right? So we want to know the customer, then we want to know the needs. This is the business case. And we want to increase the efficiency of our agents. So we don't want to have a downtime that an agent is not connected for 45 minutes to a customer or for 5 minutes to a customer. So we want to keep our agents busy and be more efficient. So what we did, we created actually requirements. And the requirements were one single application. Integrated in Lync, we want to run actually more information for the agent, more information based on reporting for the supervisor and for the marketing management. And actually, we want to be able to extend in future from only voice to chat, to persistent chat, to video, whatever is needed. So what we did, we talked to Clarity. We talked to some other partners, of course. And we integrated Clarity Connect for our advertising division for the US. And we're doing that with a second dedicated Lync and Clarity data center in Dublin by April as well. The result is great, to be honest. We achieved higher revenue. We had some troubles, of course, at the beginning to learn how a unified communication-enabled contact center runs. But at the end, agents are happy. We're using one single application. We're going for CRM integration in the next couple of months together with Clarity. And by the end, the customers are more happy because we have more history, more reporting. We know the customer in a better way. And we're offering more support for the customer when you are connected to an agent or to a media specialist in terms of advertising. So how does it look like in reality, right? So you can see here the environment and me as customer. Oh, now you can see it, right? Well, and number one is if there are two ways how we connect customers, right? There are marketing campaigns. So you receive an email from Microsoft. There's a toll-free number integrated. You call the toll-free number. You actually connect to the Lync environment. And then afterwards, you get connected to the first available agent on the Clarity and Lync side. And the agent is then afterwards connected with the Lync client and also with the Clarity application. And the great thing is actually the supervisor and the management gets a lot more reporting on what is happening in the contact center. So those advertising divisions usually have 50 up to 100 media specialists and agents. Yeah? And we have them in US, we have them in Asia, we have them in Europe, and we're extending right now. So the nice thing with the Clarity application on the top is that you have different queues, and we can see the queue health, we can see what's going on in my division. We can actually connect, we can actually also integrate, right? So the supervisor could actually listen to a call. So we have some special features that are not integrated in Lync, but that the Clarity application delivers on the top. So this is why we are using a third-party integration also at Microsoft for our customer care. So it's not a mainstream at Microsoft, but it's a partner strategy, and this is actually what we love to see from our partners and what we're using in our own environment. Well, and the ROI, or the return of investment, is pretty much that we are matching the reporting data that we did not have before with the revenue outcome on a monthly basis. And we can see it increased because we can handle more calls actually as before. That's a nice thing, right? Another example. Office 365. And there's a question.
Did Clarity just develop that solution for Microsoft, or is that available to other clients as well?
That's a great question, and I have a device for that. Do you want a Java device or do you want a Plantronics device?
Java, maybe. Yeah.
Java. Oh, there's nobody from Plantronics here. Huh?
Now you're asking.
Hey, yeah.
Thank you.
So back to your question. So is it a special development only for Microsoft, or is it available for everyone, right? It's available for everyone. So we have Greg Razors here from Clarity, John Rauschenberger. And you can use the same kind of solution that we are using within Microsoft for your business. Yeah, so we use the standard integration of Clarity. There is some custom development because our Lync environment looks a little bit different than the rest of the world. But it's pretty much the same solution in terms of UI, reporting, and capabilities. Yeah? Does it answer your question?
Yes, it does.
OK. So Office 365, that's a very interesting example. It's one of my biggest projects right now. The reason is we are serving 16 million customers on Office 365 today. We're having Lync Online, SharePoint Exchange. And before actually we went into Office 365, we implemented a lot of legacy environment behind to serve the customer needs. So what we're doing actually, we're going to a different model. The model is now that we drive with unified communications cost reduction. We want to improve satisfaction a lot because we're routing internationally customers between Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, between different global contact centers and also Microsoft engineering. And what we want to do is we want to improve the cost base. So we want to save cost up to 70% in terms of using our own platform, our own technology, unified communications, and not only phone support. Today, it works like that. You open an SR, you open a support ticket at Microsoft. So you go to the Office 365 page, you give in your information, we call you back. So that's one way, right? But we are in 2013, right? So what we want to do is we want to create a new interface. And this is one of our projects that we're having right now at Microsoft. And if you are using Office 365, you might benefit in future of this kind of support process. But of course, I'm happy if you don't need support. So on the left side, you can see the customer is reaching out to Microsoft. And then you see the support process in a very high level. It's very complex. And believe me, I'm working already for 4 or 5 months only on a business case. But we pretty much initiate the contact that a customer goes on the portal. You're creating an SR. And what we want to do in future, we want to integrate a kind of self-help opportunity. So you see a kind of visual IVR or a kind of visual interface on the page. You can choose a topic that could be Office, SharePoint, Lync. I have questions about licensing or whatever. And then afterwards, we're opening a web chat integration on the page, and we're connecting you to the skill, best skilled based resource or to the first available resource worldwide. Yeah. So Lync Web App comes here into play, right? So with Lync Web App, we have the opportunity to integrate not only chat, we can do voice. So let's say you want to make a voice call or callback for your web page. You're already having an audio device from Java or Plantronics, right? So, but your Lync is not working. This is the reason why you need support. So boom, we can call you back and we are connected to the agent, right? And the experience is much better because you don't get routed 6,000 times, right? We connect you the first time. With chat, the same thing. And if you run Lync, we pop up your Lync client and connect you through federation with Microsoft, and you're getting support. And you can share your desktop as well. So this is the future scenario where we're going for. And what you have here behind the scenes, so we are working right now with Clarity to find out, does it fit in from advertising also to Office 365? Can we run Clarity also for our online business based as UCMA-based application on the top on Lync? It makes sense, right? And this is the reason why we're going for this opportunity right now. And the time frame for a pilot that we run right now is in the next 2 to 3 months. And you can see only with this kind of different interfaces, we are able to reduce the required time between customer and between the agent for 90% in the initial entitlement process. And then afterwards also the rest is how to escalate between different resources, getting the right agent, identify the customer, and at the end close the ticket, but also confirm with the customer that everything is fine. Yeah, it's a huge topic right now at Microsoft. Well, coming to there's a question, please.
Yeah, I have a question on the earlier slide. So since you are looking to add your Office 365 business to your Clarity Connect platform, how does it scale? Like how much volume of tickets can you handle with that? How does the metric will allow you also to give you visibility?
Yes.
How can you handle also agents which are, I don't know how you do your support.
Yeah.
Are they in-house agents? Are they external?
Mm-hmm.
Working from home or in Microsoft offices?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
Okay, I don't have so many devices for so many questions. But let me chop our Plantronics. Plantronics? Oh, great. So we're having a lot of them. Let me try to answer that. Yeah. So the question was actually, how is the volume? How do we handle the volume on our platform? Also with outsourced agent, insourced agent, with mobile agents, right? Did I forget anything? No? Okay. So it's completely different, right? Because we're offering phone support, email support today. And for phone, for example, we are receiving for, give you an example for Exchange. Exchange Online gets around 38,000 phone calls per month. Yeah. And it's different from SharePoint, it's different from Lync, right? And we also have outsourced contact center around the world. Yeah? 2 of our big contact centers are already working with Lync and are federated with Microsoft. So the opportunity would be to route actually calls through federation to the offshore contact centers. For the platform itself, a very important point is how can we meet the SLA? So how needs the Lync infrastructure looks like? How do you have to design actually Lync so that you can handle so many calls or chats and that you can offer actually, first of all, a high SLA, 4 nines or 5 nines, right? And everything is stable. This is an exercise that we're running through right now. The volume itself is not a big issue because you can plan, right, with Lync 2013 or Lync 2010, the environment so that you can handle many thousand calls and you can route it to the agent. And to be honest, if you're taking chat from the customer, it's a lot less, lot less stress for the infrastructure as voice. Yeah? But sharing is also a modality, so it takes a lot of bandwidth and a lot of planning actually inside the Lync environment. So the answer is planning on a technical side, very important thing. Planning on a business side, what kind of investments needed to hold the SLA and to have a stable platform for the support. It's another one. And the third thing is with Lync, there are a lot of policies, right? So when an agent, for example, works remote, so how does the security needs look like? How does, what kind of connection requirements do we have? What kinds of device requirements do we have? Java, Plantronics, and so on. So you need to have the right equipment that, you can understand the customer. Voice quality is not an issue anymore. And reporting is also behind the scene implemented. So to be honest, we have a lot of exercises, yeah. But the good thing is when you have a look on traditional contact centers, you can capture all those different layers and you can map it into the unified communication world. But it needs a lot of planning. And the volume is one thing. We're driving right now smaller pilots, only for certain businesses. And if everything is fine, we're extending. So this is actually the kind of evolution, how we extend to more calls and more chats. And then if phone and chat is stable and is fine, then we're starting to adding other modalities like chat or video for certain businesses into the platform. Yeah? Does that give you an overview how we do it? Another question?
Yeah, actually, just a couple of things around those new modalities you were talking about. I guess one, you were talking about the Xbox team and the using PChat. I'm just wondering, like, what kind of reporting or insight have you gotten into as far as usage of that? Like, what's the uptick on that been? And specifically, like people who are answering questions on that, like how detailed are you tracking, like how they're using their time on that, where they're spending time? Is that feeding back into the self-service options? Let's say, if everyone's asking, like, how do I change my gamer tag? Does that make something new bubble up on your back? Like, is that information you're getting? And I guess the other thing around the stats is with the UC modalities, like, are you seeing a larger uptake in, say, interactions that start with IM but then elevate to voice in the contact center? So I don't want to sit there on hold waiting for somebody, but all IM in the contact center, start with the chat and then up into voice, like I'm used to doing in Lync.
Absolutely. So let me summarize the question first, and then Java or Plantronics? Plantronics, okay. So how do we do the reporting, and how do we extend between different modalities, right? So the reporting requirements are completely different for every particular business. So we're having different requirements for advertising, for Office 365, different requirements for Xbox. So it's pretty much to come up with all those requirements from the business side to match it against the standard reporting capabilities of Lync. And if this is not enough, then we're going for custom development, right? So you have all the data in your SQL server. It's just sometimes that we need to create a better access or a very customized access to get the data out. In some cases, Clarity already has reports that we don't have from the Lync side very easily integrated. And they come up with some reports that we can just use for the business. And in some other cases, right, we're going for custom development, and we are creating a customized version of reporting for our business. But it's pretty much the answers between using standard reporting capabilities using Clarity, or, for example, another UCMA-based application, and using customized developed reporting that we're integrating for our opportunities. Yeah. The second thing is to change between different modalities. That's correct, and this is a challenge for reporting as well, right? Because if you start with chat and you're extending to voice, you're extending to video, you need to capture that for the reporting. That's one thing. Yes, a lot of planning involved, and we're doing that now for smaller pilots already. And to be fair, we're only doing right now phone and chat, and persistent chat. Yeah. So for those areas, we're having pretty good reports that matching the business requirements. And when we go to video, we need to match it again. Yeah. And we're having a couple of thousand different business divisions actually at Microsoft. So to be honest, every business division has their own requirements. A lot of consolidation process. Yeah. But when we extend, the thing is, it's not only about reporting. It's also about to make the customer support center ready. If you only take phone calls, right, with your couple thousand agents, and then you switch to video or chat, you need to train those agents, right? You need to train how to communicate with chat. Can I handle multiple chats? You have maybe agents that are good on telephony, but they're not good on chat, right? Or they're good to chat, but they're not able to handle more than one phone call and to route between different customers, right? So that's a very important piece in planning, in training, and in adoption. Yeah, it needs to be part of your adoption plan, right? So this is pretty much what I can tell you about it. Yeah, but there's a lot of challenge. But the good thing is now that the projects are really running successfully. Yeah, and it's at the end, you know, when you create something new, and you actually capture training and planning very well and design very well, then you know we had success in our projects. So I only can tell you the ROI was higher afterwards as with the legacy environment that we had before. Yeah. I need to wrap up, otherwise John has no time anymore. I'm here actually for questions if you have questions afterwards, and yeah, let me drive to John. Yeah.
Yes, it's actually a good segue from kind of the vision, how everything's working great, to some of the challenges. So what are some of the things that make actually bringing this stuff to life more difficult? What are some of the challenges we see, not just with Microsoft, but with other customers who are looking to integrate unified communications and specifically Lync into their contact centers? There's three topics I want to touch on with the time that's left, specifically around that, around how do we bring this vision to life. The first one is choosing the right platform. And this applies to us as an ISV who's looking to bring products to market, but it also applies to customers, partners. You know, what is the right platform? What are the characteristics you should be looking for? What are the capabilities in those platforms that are going to help you be successful in the kinds of ideas and vision that Daniel was painting? Second of all is growth. So there were some questions about, you know, how do you scale this? How do you integrate, you know, geo-dispersed deployments? And we'll touch a little bit on that. It ties into the first one, but we'll talk about some of the challenges around that. And then lastly, how do we deliver these differentiated solutions? So I keep differentiating between, yes, we need to handle the traditional inbound calls, but then when we talk about some of these other capabilities, these different modalities, and integrating them and delivering them in new and different ways, how do we go about doing that? So the first one, we talk about the platform. You know, even if we just look at it from our perspective, we made the decision to build a brand new from-scratch contact center platform 3 years ago. You know, it was a fairly mature business, and it wasn't an easy choice for us to say, we think we can go out and compete with large established vendors in winning the kinds of projects that Daniel was talking about. And our decision to do that came entirely down to taking a look at what Microsoft was doing with, at the time, Office Communication Server, and feeling like that platform was going to give us the ability to differentiate our solution in a way that we didn't see a clear path for our competitors to do. And all of this really comes down to what has Microsoft delivered in the core platform. You know, first of all, we do view Lync as being uniquely positioned for the future, and this is in part as a result of some of the things that have happened since we made our decision. So obviously the Skype acquisition is a big one there. But even just Microsoft's presence in the consumer market prior to or in addition to Skype. So things like having a viable mobile platform, you know, things like having solutions that were already in the market that gave us a clear path to delivering consumer-focused solutions on Microsoft's platform. That was a big differentiator for us. We saw the future was going to be, yes, we needed to handle telephone calls, but delivering those types of customer care solutions out into these consumer platforms that people are getting more and more familiar with, and there's certainly a generational component to this, but the younger your customer base gets, the less likely they are to think PSTN call is their primary way of communicating with anybody. And if you force them, that's the way they have to communicate with you, that's going to be constraining moving forward. So we did see Microsoft uniquely positioned there. The second point in terms of that core platform capability, many of you may not ever need to understand this or have firsthand experience with it, but Microsoft has from day one delivered an extensibility platform on top of Lync that was what I think of as a first-class citizen. And the best testament to that is many of the new features and functionality that you see coming out in a product like Lync 2013 are built on those same APIs. So a great example would be like the Exchange Unified Messaging role, the ability to integrate voicemail into your Exchange server. That team built that on top of the same public APIs that our contact center product and other contact center products are built on top of. And that for us was important to take a look at saying Microsoft is treating the third-party partner community as a first-class citizen as they're doing development on the product. That's different than a lot of other vendors and platforms where there may not be any third-party environments, and if there is, it may clearly not be treated as a first-class participant in their environment. And then third of all, we did see some interesting opportunities for the first time, at least from our perspective, and other vendors, other platform vendors may disagree. But we saw for the first time a realistic opportunity to treat the contact center and the technology needs for that particular group in a way where they weren't going to be essentially isolated in some form of an island of technology to service just that group. When we took a hard look at what Lync was providing in terms of core media handling and signaling and call routing capabilities, we felt like, we can deliver a solution that will meet many, if not all, contact center needs where we're not going to be dropping in a new piece of infrastructure that's going to be treated and managed differently than the same infrastructure that would be used for communications outside of the call center. And there's some huge opportunities around that we saw and that our customers are now realizing to reduce cost and complexity around the infrastructure to support their call centers. So all of this, though, is really based on making a commitment to going forward with a native solution for Lync. All of those benefits I just talked about don't apply if you're going to look at a solution that interoperates or has a connectivity layer with Lync. All of those benefits around the extensibility platform, removing these islands of technologies, only come into play if the solution that you move forward with is built on top of the investments that Microsoft has made in the core platform. So you'll oftentimes hear people differentiate between a native contact center for Lync versus one that has interoperability with Lync. And I just want to take a minute to clarify what that means. And in its simplest terms, what we're talking about there is a solution that has been built on top of the APIs and the extensibility platform that Microsoft has provided. So in terms of signaling, media handling, call routing, even things like metrics collection and agent experience, a native solution is going to constrain itself to only doing what is capable on top of the APIs that Microsoft has provided. Now you can get very creative and you can do different things and color outside the lines and do things that maybe Microsoft never intended with those APIs. But as long as you constrain yourself to saying, our solution is going to be deployed as a native Lync server role, you retain all of those benefits we talked about earlier around that platform solution. Some of the characteristics of that certainly being built on top of those APIs, but even more important ones like saying the agent is going to receive that call in a Lync endpoint. It doesn't have to be the Lync client. It could be a standalone phone. But constraining yourself again to saying we're going to deliver that call to a Lync endpoint. Now, there are some downsides to it, certainly as an ISV out there trying to sell solutions, and we have customers asking, well, can you interoperate with our existing Cisco IP handsets? The answer to that is no, and we simply walk away from those opportunities. But that's really because we want to stay true to that vision of building on top of this platform that Microsoft has provided and retaining all of those benefits. Visually, if we think about how that looks from an architecture diagram, on the left-hand side, or your left-hand side, we have what would be a fairly common architecture for a Lync integrated solution, where that calls, yes, it's going to enter your Lync infrastructure through some form of a PSTN gateway or a SIP trunk, but at some point you're going to fork that call out to a separate set of infrastructure that's going to do things like media handling and signaling to ultimately get that call connected down through to an agent. If you contrast that with a native solution, the most important and the simplest thing to think about is that the signaling, the media, the call handling never leaves the Lync environment. And as an administrator who is thinking about how am I going to plan and manage and support that infrastructure over time, the simplicity of only having a single set of infrastructure to deal with for both the call center and the rest of the business, it speaks to some of the values that we see in taking that approach. What are the benefits that our customers see? It really comes down to simplicity, lower cost, and greater capabilities. So if we're talking about deploying a contact center solution that is sitting on top of the investments you're making to serve the rest of the business, it's cheaper to deploy, it's cheaper to support. Your staff doesn't need to learn how to troubleshoot call quality issues that span across multiple media platforms, multiple signaling platforms, the investments you make in your network infrastructure, even all the way down to the investments that you make in the devices that people are going to use to manage those conversations. If you go with a native solution, you're getting homogeneity across all of those different pieces of the infrastructure, and that has inherent cost savings and benefits around just the overall complexity of the environment. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about how do we scale this out and how do we deliver this across a large, complex environment. One of the areas we see a lot of questions and challenges around that, and this is just growing more and more. Daniel talked about Microsoft's use of outsourced call centers. Whether they're outsourced or insourced doesn't really matter. You have the same core challenge, which is how do I deliver contact center functionality in a geo-dispersed environment? Well, we talked a little bit earlier about these benefits of a native solution and riding on top of the investments Microsoft has made. As we've worked with customers to deploy solutions in those types of geo-dispersed environments, there are a number of core benefits that we can help them realize by riding on top of the investments Microsoft's made in the Lync infrastructure's ability to, in a very sophisticated and optimized way, route signaling and media across a global environment. The first point here is that we do retain a lot of flexibility around where the call center infrastructure is going to be deployed. So we have a number of customers today who are running call centers that span across multiple continents, but the call center infrastructure is centralized in one location. We're able to retain optimized media paths through the infrastructure that Microsoft provides around APIs to handle media routing. So we can intelligently realize where the call entered the network, where the agent we're going to route that call to is, and ensure that the media takes the most optimal path available to us from that entry point to the agent. To do that, we don't need to have the call center distributed around the globe. We can have the call center residing wherever it makes sense for the customer's particular environment. That may be distributed or it may be centralized, but we have the flexibility to do it either way. The second point here is I've talked a lot about media handling. And one of the things that isn't necessarily obvious up front but does become obvious over time is that because the call center agents are leveraging the same AVMCUs, the same media handling infrastructure that the rest of the organization needs, the investments you need to make to support those distributed agents can be leveraged for calls that aren't going through the contact center at all. So simple use cases like people holding a conference call in a branch office in Asia. Well, if you make the investment to put an AVMCU in that location, yes, it's going to help us deliver better calls to the agents and optimize media paths for the agents, but it's also going to help you if you have people in that office that are holding conference calls or simply escalating two-party calls to multi-party calls. Same AVU, same infrastructure is supporting both use cases. And then, Daniel touched a little bit on this federated delivery model. Lync gives us a great deal of flexibility around mixing and matching between hosted and on-premise deployments, between native or between integrated deployments versus cross-federated bound deployments. If you think about it in its simplest terms, this federated delivery model that is available to us in Lync makes it very easy for you as an organization to establish a partnership with an outside firm, for example, and route calls, whether they're from your internal employees or from customers, to agents that are sitting in desks and organizations provided by a third party without having that visible at all to your customers. We can simply federate with their Lync infrastructure, register their agents to be available to take calls. We have visibility to their presence. We have the ability to deliver calls to them across that IP data link between you and their organization, and we can enroll them as needed to service calls. So a quick example of what this looks like, if we think about a fairly representative example of what a call center infrastructure may look like, where you have agents sitting in a couple of locations in North America, so specifically Canada and the US. You have a handful of agents in the UK, and then a support group in India as well. If we think about how we would meet that with a traditional call center platform, There are lots of different ways this could be depicted or could be solved, but in general, you're going to have to put full PBX infrastructure in each location to give them access to essentially dial tone. You're going to need IVR and ACD infrastructure in some of those locations, potentially all of those locations. And then routing calls across locations is going to have inherent challenges just due to the fact that you have all of this infrastructure spread across the different locations. Now, if we overlay that with what it might look like in a Lync-enabled solution, first we have selective deployment of where are we going to put the call center infrastructure. In this case, for an example, we put call center infrastructure in both India and Canada, and in many cases that would just simply be due to either the cost or availability of connectivity between certain locations. India in particular is challenged in terms of bandwidth availability. But here between the US and North America, or between the North America and the UK, we have a single instance of the software able to service agents in both locations. We optionally may choose to deploy media handling infrastructure in the UK to avoid round trips of media between North America and the UK. But all we're talking about there is a standard edition server with AVMCU capability. And again, that can be leveraged for purposes outside of just the call center. Whereas in a location like the United States, we may elect to simply put a survivable branch appliance and bring SIP trunks into there. Calls entering that network can leverage the AVMCU functionality in Canada. Not a problem there. With network latency, we can still deliver good call quality. In India, then, we're going to not only put our application server, but we're also going to put a Lync infrastructure there, again, to provide media handling capabilities and keep media entering that network local in that environment. So this is just one example of what this might look like. The key takeaway here, though, is we've got a great deal of flexibility, both from the Lync infrastructure side of choosing between standard edition servers in particular locations, SBAs where it makes sense, full-blown Lync pools if that's required. And then we have similar flexibility around where does the contact center infrastructure reside. Do we put it in each location, or do we centralize it regionally or potentially globally? Now, once we kind of move beyond how do we deliver these core sets of functionality, how do we get dial tone delivered, how do we route calls efficiently, how do we ensure that those media paths are optimized, now we can start thinking about how do we deliver differentiated solutions. So how do we move beyond just traditional inbound voice calls and start delivering some of the differentiated solutions that Daniel was talking about, for example, the Office 365 team looking at. And we kind of think about that in two different ways. What can we do today? And what are the extensibility platforms that Microsoft gives us today, both as ISVs as well as individual companies looking to customize the experience that you deliver to your end users? And we do have a great deal of options available to us with what Microsoft has shipping today. I think the most exciting development that we see is Daniel alluded to UCWA, or the Unified Communications Web API. Today, prior to Lync 2013 shipping, the core APIs that Microsoft provided were all based on either server-side solutions or, in the case of client-side solutions, integrating with the Lync client. So they were great for line of business solutions, for example, if you wanted to light up presence in a website, if you wanted to put click-to-communicate functionality in the line of business applications that your end users were using. We had some great tools to do that. What we didn't have great solutions for, though, were how do we extend those communication capabilities out to our customers? How do we embed that type of functionality on our website? How do we reach out to a mobile device and enable a web chat scenario on that device, for example, or even provide a path to audio and video delivery out to that device? Well, the first step towards that vision is what we're seeing shipping with Lync 2013. So the Unified Communications Web API is Microsoft's first step in basically moving all of the extensibility APIs that were traditionally provided as native Windows platform APIs and delivering them instead as native web APIs. So UCWA basically is an API that's designed to be consumed by in-browser solutions, cross-platform, so pure JavaScript solutions that do not have a dependency, for example, on the Lync client being logged in and running on the desktop. And there's an important differentiation there. If you're familiar, for example, with SharePoint having integrated presence and click-to-communicate functionality, if you have that working in your office, sometime try logging out of the Lync client and see what happens. All of that presence and all those click-to-communicate features will disappear because those are based on client-side integration with the Lync client. UCWA changes that paradigm, and it changes it to something that's more like what you see in the Exchange or the Outlook Web Access client that shipped with Exchange 2010. So if you log into Outlook Web Access in Exchange 2010, you see what looks very similar to what you see in SharePoint, presence bubbles that are lit up, the ability to start IM conversations. That, however, continues working when you log out of the Lync client. That's a good indication of the direction Microsoft's taking in terms of giving us the tools and the platforms we need to deliver those in-browser, cross-platform solutions that our customers can take advantage of. And UCWA is the first step in that direction. Now, if we talk, though, a little bit more about what can we do today. So UCWA is in its first incarnation and gives us access to things like presence and chat, which is potentially interesting, but there's still some limitations around it. But I wanted to take just a second and highlight a project that we're working on with one of our customers. They're a global quick service restaurant. They've got thousands of restaurants spread around the globe. And we're helping them to think about how can they deliver better experiences in the restaurant for their customers. One of the things we help them build, and they've deployed now globally, is a self-service kiosk. So you can walk into the restaurant, and instead of having to walk up to the counter and speak to a crew member, you can simply go up to a kiosk, select the items that you want, and place your order. What we're helping them envision now is how could we enable customer care capabilities in that quick service restaurant when they're standing there and they have a question about a particular product. You know, does this hamburger that I'm looking at here contain gluten, for example? Can I eat this item safely? What we're seeing here is a mock-up of how we could enable them to quickly, from that self-service kiosk, simply indicate that they have a question about a product that they're considering ordering, a question about a product on the menu. And we can then immediately connect them with somebody, in this case via video, where they can ask that question. Now, this is all being delivered by the Lync client through the Lync infrastructure, so the video, the audio controls you see down on the bottom, the ability to initiate the conversation, to end the conversation. However, obviously, we don't want to surface the Lync client up to that end user. So this is just one example of where we can take the communication capabilities that the Lync infrastructure provides, deliver it in a completely different user experience. So in this case, a kiosk application where we're not seeing or touching the Lync client at all. However, we're still routing that call through the same Clarity Connect infrastructure. We're finding the best available agent based on the context we know. In this case, where is the store or the restaurant located, and what is the menu item that they're looking at? And then connect them to that person with the correct modality. So video if they have enough bandwidth, downgrade it to audio if they don't, and connect them up to that agent. So just one example of what we can do today, and this is with shipping technology. This isn't dependent on anything that's coming in the future. This isn't using Skype integration or WebRTC. This is using the shipping Lync client and the shipping support we have today to extend that client and embed those into the communication capabilities into other applications. So with that, I haven't given out anything yet. So either I'm perfect in what I'm communicating, or you guys are waiting till the end. So I have one question up front here. Go ahead.
Could you tell me how Lync and Clarity deliver a contact center that serves multiple customers? So, you know, with all the examples that I've seen, it's really, you know, supporting Microsoft, or it's a part of this internal team. But if you have a contact center and their job is really just outsourced from multiple places.
Sure. So the question is, how do we serve multiple customers? The first question, we've got Plantronics headsets. We've got this one, which I've got my eye on, so if anyone wants to steal it. We also have a book on how to do this type of development yourself. So which one do you want to go with? Plantronics headsets. So, you know, so the question was, how do we basically enable users who are going to be serving multiple customers? Right, so maybe it's an outsourced support group who is taking calls from multiple different customers, or taking tech support or sales-related calls, whatever it might be. So there's really nothing specific to our product or Lync in terms of how we would do that. You know, speaking specifically about our product, at a very high level, the way that a native contact center works basically is that you deploy and provision it as a trusted application in your Lync infrastructure, which essentially just gives us the ability to be registered as a SIP endpoint that calls can get directed to. Right, so much like you can set up the Exchange server role to be an endpoint that Lync knows how to route calls to, we work the same way. What happens, though, then is you can provision one or many contacts that route calls to that endpoint. And each of those contacts can have phone numbers. So in the case of a deployment that's going to support multiple customers, you would simply provision multiple contacts, assign them each different phone numbers, and then when the call arrives at the contact center platform, we're going to invoke the IVR or the call flow that is appropriate, that is attached to the phone number that was dialed. So the same instance of the product may have two completely different call flows for two completely different customers that your support group is serving. We know that context based on the dialed number that Lync routed to us. We invoke the appropriate IVR. We prompt the customer for the information that we need to determine the queue that we're ultimately going to route that call to. And then agents are going to be candidates for that call simply based on the skills that they're provisioned with. So if you have a pool of agents who are answering calls from multiple customers, they can be skilled with skills that cross different call flow boundaries. So they may have skills for customer A and customer B, resulting in them getting calls alternating between those two. When they receive the call, they'll know based on the context we provide the agent in the Lync conversation window when the call is delivered, which queue this came through. And you can provide more information if you want in terms of embedded web applications that we can put directly into the Lync client. So they can know this is a tech support call for customer A versus a sales call for customer B, and they can answer and handle that call appropriately. Yep, in the back.
In the last example you had, did you, are those web parts that we could build something with, or is that a complete custom app?
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question was, are these web parts that you could use to build your own app? Prize selection first, if you have one.
I think the little, this one here? Oh, no, the next
Damn you. It's the only one we have. No, he wanted mine. So now I can't exercise and get skinny, so that's your fault. So in terms of the technology behind this, there's a couple of limitations. If we talk about the APIs that are available from Microsoft today to do this type of thing. So first off, to answer maybe your upfront question, no, Clarity does not provide, and we don't have any kind of a toolkit that would allow you to assemble something like this. From a technology standpoint, how can we make this come to life today? First of all, it has to be a native Windows desktop application. So we do not have the ability today to embed streaming video into a web-delivered application where the video is being serviced by Lync. It's coming. It's not there yet today. In terms of what we have today, we can embed a native Windows form control, which is the video player from the Lync client, into a native Windows Forms application. So this example is a WPF desktop application running in full screen mode on a Windows XP embedded kiosk that our customer uses to run their in-store self-service checkout. In this case, then, we can embed the Windows video player control, the Lync client video playback control into the native desktop application, and then we can enable things like the volume control and the mute button through the automation interface that Lync provides. Now, Lync does support running the client in what's called UI suppression mode, where the Lync client is literally suppressed and you can't see the UI. And unfortunately, I guess depending on how you look at it, embedding these types of capabilities like the video window into a third-party application actually requires that the Lync client be running in UI suppression mode. Makes great sense for something like a kiosk. Definitely has some limitations, again, with what's shipping today in terms of a customer-facing solution running on their desktop.
Do you think you'll be developing something for the web, a toolkit?
We're going to take a look at that. It really comes down to when Microsoft starts providing supported APIs for third parties to start delivering streaming media interfaces in web clients. Right? So when does Microsoft officially, and I'm kind of hedging and playing words a little bit here. There are ways to do it. There are companies that have shipped products that do things that Microsoft doesn't support, like mobile phone clients that can do video and voice, but those are using unsupported APIs. And we tend to, especially if we're going to productize something, we want to only do it on top of supported APIs. So there's a little bit of wait and see with what Microsoft does, and obviously they're moving quickly to get Skype integrated and to get WebRTC support built into the products. And kind of we'll take their lead and see when they start providing supported APIs for that stuff. I'll go back in the corner first.
The solution examples that you provided for Office 365 and Xbox, were those all out-of-the-box Clarity products, or did you have to target them?
So the question was actually, Xbox Office 365, is it an out-of-the-box solution, or was it a kind of customized solutions for? So for Xbox, we used out-of-the-box persistent chat, so former group chat from Lync and Office Communication Server in persistent chat integration with Lync 2013. So it's the standard persistent chat environment that you have in 2013. So only chat right now, no voice. But we're extending voice later, so we might think about Clarity or some custom development around it. So for Office 365, there's a lot of custom development. So before you reach out to an agent who uses actually Clarity, right? So all the web chat integration, Visual IVR, and some other pieces, everything is custom developed. But it's available. So if you go to the development, so the SDK, so the website for Microsoft, where we describe actually the different APIs and the SDK that you have for Lync 2013, and also UCWA in a couple of days. Then you find the description how you build it. Yeah, so how do you build a bot? How do you build a web chat integration? So we have kind of examples and also code examples that you can download, and you can integrate it in your applications or in your web page as well. Yeah, so there's some stuff that we reuse that we publish also to customers and partners outside. Yeah. What kind of? Well, I have a book, Plantronics and
You have to
Java.
fight that guy.
Ooh, Plantronics? Okay.
There was another question over here. Yeah, go ahead.
So, I've seen a lot of the contact centers in the exhibit hall
Yeah.
doing
Oh, thank you very much.
initiating a service request through telephony or chat. The service desk that I work with is they have a need to also initiate the point of contact through email, and they would like that to come into the same queues as chat or telephony.
Yep.
Does Clarity or any other contact center all that kind of
Sure.
capability?
So,
If I take a look.
book.
Oh, perfect.
Where's Michael Green? So the question was, does Clarity or do any of the UC-enabled contact center solutions offer email integration? So I'll give you the answer from our product standpoint today. It's on our roadmap for this year. It's not available today. In terms of platform capabilities, a couple of quick notes here. Microsoft has done, I guess it depends on how you want to answer this question. Microsoft has provided lots of different ways to access email in an Exchange server over the last several years in terms of programs and APIs accessing email, the email store. Fortunately, I think for everybody over the last 2 to 3 years, they've settled on one finally, which is Exchange Web Services. And that gives us a very rich, as a third-party developer, a very rich way to query and get notified of information in an Exchange mailbox store. So we are working today on adding in our email connector for Exchange. We're doing it through Exchange Web Services. We think that's the right way to do it long-term. Products that are integrating through things like IMAP or POP. Ultimately, again, you're kind of going to get into that state where they're not able to take full advantage of what the Exchange store can do, but they're also going to operate in a way that's sort of inconsistent with where Microsoft is going in terms of managing access to information residing in those platforms. So for us, Exchange Web Services gives us a nice clear path to say anytime an email arrives in this mailbox, notify the contact center platform, we'll suck that mail in, we can look at the sender, we can look at the subject, we can look at the content, route it to a queue based on whatever filters or rules our customers set up. And then it's simply another work item that we have to allocate an agent to handle, much the same way we do with IM calls or voice calls. I honestly don't know if any of the other Lync integrated or native Lync contact center vendors have email integration. I don't know the answers to that. We will be shipping it this year. We're working with a customer right now. All of the features we add to our product we do through customer engagements. So we're working with a couple of customers actually to spec out what they want to see from a feature functionality standpoint. Our schedule is to have our first beta customers live in the third quarter and have it generally available in the fourth quarter. There's another question. Yeah, go ahead.
On the kiosk-based application,
Oh, yeah.
does that allow communication the other direction? Say somebody walks up to the kiosk, since it's based on Lync client already, if they're there hovering on a screen for
Sure.
2 minutes, you proactively.
Yeah. So the question is, do we today have, or is it possible to initiate communications based on, let's just say, user actions, and that may be an inaction. I'm looking at something for a long time. Book headset, Jabra, Plantronics, they're all nice. Plantronics headsets. So, the short answer to that is, it's certainly possible. It's not. I want to be clear too. This type of stuff today is custom dev, right? So working with a company to say we have a self-service kiosk, we want to add this type of communication functionality. There's really nothing from a technical standpoint that would preclude you from doing what you oftentimes experience on a website. If I go to Dell and I build a laptop and I look at it for more than 8 seconds, they pop up, you want to chat, you want to chat, you want to chat, you want to chat. Yes, you can do that, and technically there's nothing that's going to stop you from doing that. And you can certainly proactively ask the customer if they'd like to talk to somebody about the product that they're looking at. there's nothing technically that would prevent you from doing that. Let me go over here, and then I'll come back to you, Will. Yep.
So just a quick question about, like, I know you guys said you're not really in Lync operations, but as you roll this out, I mean, the use of Lync for contact center and the use of Lync for just regular business case is kind of different, especially in just like enterprise voice usages. You know, instead of being like 10% concurrency, it's 100% or 120% if you're queuing a lot of calls, and then conference usage is way higher than typical. In these cases, we're provisioning extra conference in the audio routing. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, what kind of impact have you guys seen as you roll this out on, are people's Lync environments ready for this kind of thing? What kind of sizing have they had to do? And has anything, like, what kind of lessons have you learned from deploying this and, needing to get people prepared that, they're running the right kind of Lync to run contact center on that?
Sure. So, do you have a gift? We're down to a book or a Plantronic or a Jabra headset.
I'll take the Jabra.
Okay. So the question there really was, what are the lessons learned that we've seen from organizations trying to deploy contact center solutions on top of Lync that are specific to the challenges that contact centers provide, around managing the communications? So it's a long question, and the answer is it varies. It depends on the specific customer, all the sort of normal disclaimers. I guess I would break it down two ways. If we remove the complexity of a geo-dispersed deployment and we think about maybe just a centralized large call center, the biggest challenges we see that maybe are a little bit unique to the call center, us, like many of the products out there today, escalate every inbound call to a multi-party call so that we can take advantage of the Lync AV MCU's audio stream routing capabilities. Right, that's how we enable things like call recording, supervisory join, whisper join functionality. That inherently sort of changes the nature of the call. It's no longer a two-party call. It's no longer peer-to-peer in terms of the media path. Everything is flowing through the AV MCU. There definitely are some challenges there around ensuring that the customer has done sufficient sizing and capacity planning around the AV MCU infrastructure to account for the fact that every inbound call is going to go through that. Beyond that, I guess the other big lessons learned, I would say virtualization versus physical is a big thing that everybody wants to virtualize, and Microsoft now officially supports virtualization in terms of the Lync server roles, as do we with our application servers. I think a lot of people, though, skip the fine print around how is virtualization supported. So things like oversubscribing host CPUs can definitely cause a real impact on the contact center. So yes, you can virtualize an AV MCU, but per Microsoft's guidance, it has to have dedicated CPUs on the host and dedicated memory on the host. We've had multiple customers incur problems both with our application servers and the Lync infrastructure because they have real example. We had one customer running 32 VMs on a dual quad-core host machine with all guests having a minimum of 2 CPUs and some going up to 4. So they were in the range of 8 to 10 times oversubscription on the host CPU, and they were wondering why they were having audio quality problems. Beyond that, the last thing I would say is, and here the story gets better, but it still needs to get it gets better with 2013, but it needs to get better moving forward. A lot of the challenges just come down to identifying and troubleshooting and resolving call quality issues. An agent took 55 calls today. 3 of them had audio quality issues. As a network admin, as a Lync infrastructure admin folks, how do I identify what caused those problems with those 3 calls? First of all, I have to find the 3 calls. And, finding that in our database, finding that in the Lync CDR database is a challenge. But then, and we had a good conversation last night with some of our customers, the Lync CDR data does a great job of telling you what happened, but it doesn't tell you why it happened. So it tells you, there was an unacceptable level of jitter on the call, or the media stream dropped halfway through, but it doesn't tell you why. And I think this is where we do start to see organizations who are maybe coming from a traditional telephony background, who are used to having a set of tools that Microsoft is quickly providing in Lync, but maybe they aren't quite there yet to diagnose and troubleshoot the root cause of those issues. When you start talking about the kinds of call volumes agents are going to have, it's not like the CIO who takes 3 calls a day and has a problem with one of them. You've got agents taking hundreds of calls a day, and it does become more problematic to troubleshoot those. There are some better tools coming from Microsoft. 2013 improves that. There's even some stuff that Microsoft Research is partnering with the Lync team to do to not only tell you what happened, but start to give you some guidance as to why it happened and potentially even resolve it. But there are some definite challenges there just as the product matures as a true enterprise telephony platform. All right. With that, we have one book left, but we're pretty much out of time. Okay, this guy wins the book, and then that'll be our last question. Excellent.
Does being a native-built application present any drawbacks as far as integrating with other third-party parts of the contact center infrastructure, like recording?
Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, are there challenges inherent to being a native contact center platform for integrating with traditional third-party contact center products? You mentioned Verint, so I'll talk a little bit about that as a good case study. So we are actively right now doing our first ever integration with Verint. So taking our contact center product and enabling Verint for both call recording integration as well as agent utilization and WFM. I would say the biggest challenges that are introduced are that we are constrained primarily around media capabilities to what Lync provides. Right? So we don't have the ability to deliver a media stream to a third-party recording product that isn't using a codec that Microsoft provides. Right? Because we've intentionally made the decision of saying we're not doing media handling, so we can't transcode their RT audio stream into something that a recorder could handle. So in the case of Verint, for example, yep, that was a constraint to say, which version of your product supports a signaling and media interface that we can get to from Lync? And fortunately, in the case of Verint, their most recent release of their product, they do have a recording interface we can get to with interfaces that Lync supports and provides. But we have talked to some call vendors who are third-party vendor products who we've simply either had to tell our customer the version of your product the version of their product that you are on, doesn't support an interface we can get to. And that's just one of the places where we have to throw up our hands and say we can't. There's nothing we can do about that. You either need to upgrade or we need to wait until the vendor provides support for those interfaces. Beyond that, though, as long as we can get beyond the media or the signaling and codec integration points, there's really not. I mean, we've got, for those of you familiar with sort of contact center architecture, we've got full back-to-back call handling capabilities in our product, which gives us a great deal of flexibility. We're essentially a man in the middle of every call going on. That combined with the APIs on top of the Lync AVMCU to in very fine-grained ways specify to the AVMCU which media streams should go where and in which directions. There's really not a lot of constraints around what we can do as long as we can get past those interop issues on the signaling and codecs. All right. So I want to thank you all for coming. Daniel, did you have any?
One more question, what?
My question was similar. It was about a reporting tool either for technical troubleshooting or for just call statistics. So just
Our approach to reporting, I think, is consistent with what we've done elsewhere. Basically, we populate a SQL Server database and we provide reports using SQL reporting services. Our approach around that, honestly, has been to fully document and make our data repository as understandable as possible for customers so they're not beholden to us in building reports. So our goal really is to be very transparent around saying, here is the structure of our database, here's how you can get the data you need out of it. We're happy to build reports for you in terms of custom reports if you need them. But we really want to encourage as customers who are familiar with report generation tools that can sit on top of SQL Server, whatever they might be, SQL reporting services or anything else, to have all the information they need to go in and find and discover the data they're looking for and build their own reports. All right. With that, we'll wrap up. If you have further questions, we have a booth in the exhibit hall. We'll be there the rest of tonight and tomorrow, and Daniel will be floating around and generally available as well. Thank you all.